Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge, and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Gabriel Jagush, Junior Warden at Fort Worth 148.
Evve Kuykendall, Master of Ceremonies, Fort Worth 148.
So we're trying out our new get-up tonight. See how clear our voices are recording live.
You know, we are recording from an undisclosed location in the Metroplex.
Except for me.
Except for you. You're recording in an undisclosed location in Central Texas.
Yeah, this will give us a good test, though, for call-in live guests like this. This will be a good test.
Because this way we can do a call-in. We can have the live feed on Facebook Live, and then people can call in. And just like a radio show, they'd have to turn off the audio on their computer or whatever so they didn't get a feedback loop. But otherwise...
Upward and onwards.
Upward and onwards.
Very cool. High tech.
High tech. Conference calls.
Fantastic. Because we do have a couple of listeners who have been very adamant about we need to have call-ins.
We'll see.
Well, we can make that happen.
And if you have feelings about that,
you can email us at notmyemailaddress.com.
555-2495. All right, gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about installations. And actually, this is a thrown together show because we had another one planned with Brother Craig Enderley. We were going to talk about Grandview, which we're going to do in the future, but he had an emergency come up. I mean, last minute, right before we were going to record. So we slipped in Plan B, installations.
Yep. And Kara.
Several people out there, several guys are going to be planning their own installations. So, I feel this is timely, right? Because it comes out now. Installation season starts in 4 months. If you hear something that you like on here,
use it.
Put it in there. And technically, we are a little late. If you're just now starting to plan your installation,
God help you.
you're behind the curve a little bit, but still, this is good.
Yeah.
If you're junior warden, take notes.
Yeah, and we've done variants of an installation episode probably about once every season.
Seems like it.
Or we've done at least 2, and this is season 4, and so this is the 3rd one. And I want to say, not in a negative way, get used to it, because one of the things that we're going to try and do is every season, if there's a topic that we need to hit on and bring to the people with our updated life experiences or with a guest that can provide more insight, then we're absolutely going to do that. And hopefully, as we grow older, wiser, and more physically broken, we can provide you with more entertainment and wisdom. So,
and frankly, we're all getting Alzheimer's anyway, so we forgot what we talked about in the last episode. Anyway.
There we go.
So get used to us repeating our silly old stories.
Yeah. So we are, as before, our episode content is planning for installations. Our discussion topic is, why do you feel the decision was made back in the day to make our installation ceremony an open ceremony that anybody, including non-Masons, can visit and see?
It used to be not. And for me, I immediately, and maybe it's because I'm disgruntled, I immediately go to, we need more members. So let's give them a glimpse of what we're doing, as a way to attract members. I would like to think that was something different, but I can't think of any other reason why it would have become open.
Rhit Moore, you cynical, bitter old man. I completely agree.
Well, then let me be the unwitting voice of optimism here, which is so unusual. So uncharacteristic.
Being optimistic? What the hell is that about?
How did I get this role? I think that there's also an argument to be made that when on your journey to the east, there's a certain amount of pressure that gets put on your family and your loved ones, and for them to be able to be part of something that is important that they've seen you go through, but they've never been able to necessarily be part of. Letting them have a little glimpse into our Masonic world, I think that that's something that they can share in, and it's something they would be proud of too. I mean, how many hours has wives, girlfriends, significant others? How many hours have they spent, with all of you guys, and putting up with your BS and delaying having a child in the case of you, Gabe?
I was going to say I feel personally attacked, and then I was personally attacked. Woo! Hey, now, it's not delaying. It just works out that our existing plans line up really well with it.
Well, you know what, and to be honest, as a father of 3, I would say actually waiting is a hell of a smart thing to do. I wish I would have sometimes, right? I have no regrets about my kids, but sometimes I wish, I would have pushed it back a couple of years.
You got to live that dink life, dual income, no kids.
Right. The question I have for you is, do you know when we switch from a closed to an open ceremony?
No.
I mean, maybe the time frame would provide some context.
Oh, it certainly would, and it was something I wanted to look up, but I didn't even know where to start.
I can already hear Jim Rumsey screaming at us.
I was in the library looking through, but it is. I mean, unless I had some kind of marker, it's just shooting in the dark. Trying to figure out, open up proceedings and figure out when it was done, because I have no clue.
Yep.
Right. Well, because some thoughts I have about it is, now there's appendant bodies, right, and it may be a way to help get them involved. Now you have, in the late 1800s, you had Eastern Star come along, and they were a big part of lodge activities. I heard it said that, there used to be a time when you couldn't even think about becoming master of your lodge unless you were also involved in Eastern Star, both you and your wife. It was that important. As well as, Rainbow and Demolay, there's several open ceremonies that a lot of lodges have tradition of doing during their installation. So maybe that's it too. That would have come along in the early 1920s.
Yeah.
So perhaps that may have been a reason for it, even though I still feel there's a lot of truth to helping us advertise without advertising, because especially in towns where the lodge is it's downtown on the square, everyone knows everybody else, it'd be a great way to promote yourself without coming out and saying, hey, would you like to join us?
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't know when it was, but let's say it was after the Morgan affair, as a way to show the public that we weren't crazy, murderous Mason kind of thing. There's no telling. Because it very well may not have had anything to do with membership and more just to show, because I know throughout our history we've been attacked by society many times, and the installation ceremony really opens up, to show what we do at the core as Masons. So could have had something to do with that. There's no telling. That would be interesting to know.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it also is a great way to let anybody, if it is open to I won't even say open to the public, because I don't think that any of us would say that while it's an open ceremony, it's necessarily open to the public.
That's true.
But it does kind of give people a little glimpse into the leadership of an organization. So let's say that if you are a part of another organization in your community, you would at least know who to contact, who's in the leadership structure of the Freemasons in your town. So I guess it does serve a bit of a purpose in that regard, especially in Billy's example of that small town where everybody knows everybody. The changes in leadership of different civic organizations would probably be important. And if you think about, depending on when this was changed, think about how many, just here in Texas, how many lodges are in really small communities where everybody knows everybody in that town. And it's been the same Worshipful Master circuit, every 5 or 6 years, everybody makes a run through the officer line. So I can see how that would be an important thing to do.
Yeah, and I want to be clear that whenever this was changed, it's something I would have supported, because it gives more power to the lodge. They can decide whether they want to do an open or closed installation. I mean, that's still the case. So the more autonomy we have as a lodge, I think it's a better thing, because I know a lot of lodges that do open it, well, most do, but I know a lot of lodges in small communities that do it very successfully, and it's a great thing for them. So I don't think it was a change that hurt us in any way. I don't know how much it helped, but I don't know what the original intent was for. Because if it was for membership, that didn't work.
No. For me, the bigger aspect is familial involvement and community participation. Like, that's a big deal. Although there's one of the ladies in my office is the wife of a Mason, and she said that when he served as master, she dreaded installation season, because there was a couple years that she got shanghaied into helping out doing the preparation and everything like that. And so,
if I saw my notes, I think that we're going to make that recommendation again.
Yeah.
So,
I've already, yeah.
So plan your familial involvement accordingly.
Yes.
So
we'll talk about that.
Let's move on to the episode content itself. So, Rhit, you said here, when should one begin to plan for his term as Worshipful Master? Not to be confused. So, when should you plan for your term as Worshipful Master, not to be confused with preparing to be Worshipful Master?
Yeah, and that is a little confusing. When should you start planning your installation? I should say, not planning to be Worshipful Master. That should be as soon as you become an EA.
I don't know about that. Something about tampering with untempered mortar. Yada.
It's a long, rough road. Billy, what are your thoughts? When should you start? When should you start planning for installation?
So honestly, I think you should start thinking about it as soon as you are elected to the line, and not hardcore, but start. Actually, I had this listed as a note that I was going to bring up later on. But one of the best pieces of advice I received was from Rhit Moore, who's he's currently the Grand Captain General of the Grand Commandery of Texas, and I had asked him, because I was elected to be a Dias officer in our commandery, and I asked him, could you give me some tips, some things that maybe help you out? And he said, get a notebook and write down things of what you like and don't like for the next couple of years until you're the one in charge. He's like, in that way you have something to look back on, and you have kind of a proven record of what works, what doesn't work, what you liked and what you didn't like, to help you plan your year accordingly.
Yeah. More data, the better.
Yeah. So if you ask me, I'm like, when should you start planning your year as Worshipful Master? Well, that's as soon as you're elected to Junior Warden, or if you skip Junior Warden, definitely at the beginning of Senior Warden.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've mentioned before is that Junior Warden is where you start brainstorming and making contact with folks for advice and ideas. And then Senior Warden is when you make all the phone calls to cement the plans. And then, obviously, as Worshipful Master, execute the plans.
So when it comes to... Go ahead, Billy.
Well, no, I was going to say another thing I heard, too, and I don't remember who told me this. It was as soon as I became Junior Warden, someone told me, you need to plan during your Junior Warden and Senior Warden year, because as soon as you become Worshipful Master, the moment you're installed, there's no more plan. Now you stick to what you have planned, right? So you're no longer in charge of it. It takes a life of its own. So make sure your plan is complete before you assume the office.
Ooh, yeah, that's good. I mean, because if you don't have those plans in place before you get there, fail to plan to fail.
Yeah. The one exception I would say is if you are wanting to be, like, if you know that your installation as Worshipful Master would line up with the term of a sitting Grand Master, and you go, okay, this guy just got elected to Grand Junior Warden, I'm senior deacon of my lodge, I want him to install me when I'm master, right? That's when you actually reach out and say, hey, you just got elected, can I put you on my calendar? Give them a little bit of breathing room, right? But, there are some exceptions where if you have enough confidence in your ability to progress through the line from, like, senior or junior deacon onwards, go ahead and make that reservation, 4 years in advance,
Actually, you have to, because especially if you're trying to get a Grand Lodge officer, those guys, their calendar fills up as soon as they're elected to the Grand Lodge.
Yeah, as Grand
my
Junior
request
Warden.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, as Grand Junior Warden, their calendar's full as Grand Master, pretty much. So if you waited...
sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, go ahead. That's how it works. Proceed, sir.
No, I was going to say, so I'm lucky enough that, most worshipful Grandmaster Paul Underwood has agreed to be my installing officer. Well, I reached out to him. We started talking about this in November of 2018 for him to be my installing officer at the end of June in 2020. And to be honest, his calendar was already full, and the only reason I got on his calendar is because someone else had reached out to him and had to drop that date. So, when I first asked him, he's like, I'm sorry, my calendar's full. And then he called me back a couple of days later. He's like, I have one spot. Do you want it? And I was like, of course. But that was 2 years in advance. The only way I got on this calendar is because someone else dropped off.
Yeah. No, you got to be on your ball with that. So that may be number one, but what do you feel is the number one item you plan as for your installation? Like, what's the first thing you got to nail down?
Well, besides the grand officers and who you want as your installing team.
Yeah, let's take that as a given.
Schedule. Well, in our case, it's scheduling, right? Because we're in a large Masonic temple that has 5 different lodges, and multiple appendant bodies. The second thing I did was, as soon as I had nailed down the date with the Grand Master, I reached out to the Temple Association and let them know I needed that day. So that day has been on their calendar since 2018 as the day that I was going to be installed. So if you're fortunate enough to have a lodge where your building, you're the only lodge there, and you have control over it, that's fantastic. But if you don't, if you're sharing facilities, you need to make sure that you're on the calendar, because the last thing you want to do is make all these plans.
Got to be on the ball.
Someone else has that date. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's actually what happened to me recently when I was trying to finalize a date for the Worth Commandery installation. One of the first things I did this year was reach out to the temple, and I was like, I want this date. And they said, nope, that was booked, 3 weeks ago. It was something like I had missed it by only a month, and it was just like, oh, whoops. So there was a big panic.
There's nothing worse than reaching out and saying, hey, I need this date, and then being told, oh, too bad, go pound sand, because you're not getting it.
Yeah. And, also, fair's fair. We live in a busy building, and, that's something that we all need to know. Scheduling is a huge deal.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to scheduling, it's almost one and the same, that you need to communicate that with people that you know are going to be officers in your installation, and then communicate that to, members of the lodge as well, so you can get as many there, because if you end up, your senior warden's not going to be able to be there, you might look at another date kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I would say another thing too would be to start looking at who you would want to pick as your officer team. You should start building a potential list as junior warden and senior warden. You should start weeding through that list and figuring out who's actually there, who's active, who's going to be a contributing member of the team.
Yeah. Something else I would say about your installation date is, while it is ideal to have every officer that is going to serve as an installed officer there present at the installation, as long as you have a supermajority of your officers there, don't be afraid to go with a date that one or two people are going to miss.
Yeah.
Because if one or two people are going to miss, that's a bummer. But if it means that you get to have the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge install you on that date when he would otherwise not be available, then that's what you got to do.
Yeah. Plus, if you're installing a full team, you're talking about 13 guys. It's going to be very hard to get everybody there at that time. And if it is the case that you don't have people there, just make sure you have enough time to install them afterwards, because you have to do it by July 31st, I think is the date. So if they can't be installed in that ceremony, it can be a called meeting afterwards. Or it's stated, whatever comes next, they can be installed. And if they already sit there, like our musician who's out of the country a lot, they just roll over unless somebody else is installed there.
Mm-hmm. And go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that it's hard. So here in Texas, at least, our installation is probably at one of the worst times, because it's when people are out for vacation, the kids are out of school, people are taking time off of work to go to, on a cruise or, fly to Europe or what have you, because it's the perfect time to do that. And then you also have sports going on during that time. You have, it's rough, actually, to have June and July as our installation season.
Yeah, and there's a lot of jurisdictions that focus around December St. John's, which is also really bad because that's Christmas and New Year's. So no matter which St. John's Day you're using, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
The other, so kind of since we're talking about scheduling and the date being priority numero uno, there's a note here, in a metropolitan area with a lot of lodges, this can be tricky, right? And it's not just because you might be sharing a building, right? If there's a lodge where you might even consider them like a sister lodge, where a lot of their guys go to your lodge and your lodge goes to theirs all the time, or if there's another large lodge, right, where you know that, hey, like, regardless of your size, if you're a big lodge or a small lodge, right, but you know that there's going to be a lot of people at the big lodge, don't schedule against them.
Yeah.
Because ideally, unless you're deliberately shooting for a quiet, intimate event, which is perfectly fine, it's desirable, and not saying you have to, but it's perfectly desirable to want to have a lot of people there. And so try not to schedule against large lodges. Try not to schedule against your sister lodge. Keep in communication with the other lodges in your district, because even if you don't share a building, you still need to be somewhat cognizant of what they're doing.
And think about how many lodges share membership. I mean, how many have plural memberships in local bodies? I mean, there are people in our lodge that have memberships in the Daylight Lodge that meets in our temple.
Yeah.
And so if you end up scheduling on the same day as they do, or vice versa, you end up cutting in. They have to make decisions about, okay, which installation am I going to go to? Which lodge am I going to go to on which date? It just cuts across in all the wrong ways.
Yeah, and I mean that's rural areas too, because after traveling the state, interviewing small lodges, they're a very tight-knit community, and although that next lodge may be 15, 20 miles from them, they still do a lot of stuff together. So, try to coordinate those to where you can support each other if at all possible.
Yeah, and also, nobody's saying, let me rephrase that. I was going to say, nobody's saying you can't do a joint installation, But yeah, you can do a joint installation with another lodge. I've been to, every year, a bunch of lodges in Waco do a joint installation, and when I don't remember why I was there. I was there for another Masonic function in addition to this lodge's installation. And I went to an installation that was, I think, like 8 different lodges at once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because some of the lodges had traveled to Waco for the purpose of installation and had been given dispensation. It was an absurd number of lodges. It was like, I think like 6 to 8, something like that.
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, and I remember being really impressed with it. And they used
I could see that being like a really neat thing
Team
for a
building.
lot of...
Well, and the auditorium was
like
packed.
especially like if a district were to get together and do something like that, where like 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6 lodges in the district were to get together and have, the same person preside over all of it. I mean, that could be really cool from a team building perspective, from like leadership perspectives. I mean, it's just...
Well, and think about it this way, right? Like, you have... how many lodges do we have in District 64?
31.
31. So, obviously untenable and unmanageable, but imagine a joint installation of 31 lodges.
Oh, that would fill the temple up. Well, and I just think about, especially for a smaller community, you could get, the press involved, and you could get a little, publicity from it.
Yeah, be like, whole bunch of Masons doing really weird things. They invited us to it.
Well, and I know out in McKinney, I mean, there's so many lodges that are within driving distance of McKinney, where I was raised. There's Salina Lodge. There's a couple of lodges out further east. I forget their name. Please don't shoot me. Send all your hate mail somewhere else. But I could see like joint installations being something that would, because we shared membership. Why not share installations? And it's just a great opportunity to build the brotherhood.
Yeah. And depending on your district, there are some districts that have super great levels of cohesion, right? All the lodges are active with each other. Everybody knows everybody. I mean, the district is a big family, right? Yeah. Everybody knows there are some districts like that, and that's awesome. And everybody knows that there are some districts where lodges kind of go and do their own thing, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you wanted to increase more of that interconnectivity and that familial aspect to it, man, joint installation is not a bad idea.
No.
But, again, scheduling a date.
So going back to that scheduling a date, though, and being aware of what the other lodges are doing, don't forget about the larger appendant bodies, right? So if you have a shrine ceremonial or some big Scottish Rite dinner that's happening at the same time as you're trying to do your installation, it's going to create a conflict with some of your own officers, because now they're going to have to choose which one do I attend. Oh, well, this one I can be installed later. This event only happens once a year. It can create some conflict there too. So be aware of what the larger appendant bodies are doing in the area too.
Yeah. So before we talk about the team for installation, what is the date of our installation, Billy? Or your installation?
So the installation we're doing this year is actually going to be an evening installation. I don't know why most lodges, we tend to try and do a morning installation on the weekend, but ours is actually going to be the evening of June 27th. We're going to have an installation at about 6, followed by dinner in a banquet at 7 p.m. So yeah, June 27th.
Perfect. Mark your calendars, brothers. You can come see the Grand Master at work. So, who makes up an installation degree, or not degree, but who makes up an installation team?
Okay. So, bare minimum, you have to have 3 officers, right? And that's your installing officer, your installing marshal, and your installing chaplain. And when it comes down to it also, if you have someone who you really want to be part of your team, consider the marshal's going to have to do a lot of walking around. It's not necessarily going to have much speaking parts. The installing officer is going to have a lot of speaking parts. And then the chaplain is going to have just a small bit, right? He does the indication at the open. So use that to, figure figure out also who you want in those positions. Some places have an assistant marshal, so if you're using a series of chairs that you have set up, you can have an assistant marshal that, as the marshal brings the person up to the altar, the assistant marshal discreetly removes the chair, and so at the end of the installation, your floor is now clear. You're ready to go straight into whatever presentations you want to do.
And it looks so much better.
But really, those 3 or 4 are all you need to do the installation.
Are there any requirements of those team members? Like,
Yes.
Do they have to meet certain qualifications in order to be a part of the team?
I believe they all have to be past masters of the lodge in your jurisdiction.
I don't think it has to be jurisdiction. I know the installing master has to be a past master.
So,
Okay.
as I have it, and I may be wrong, they have to be members of the Grand Lodge of Texas.
Yeah.
Which doesn't have to be past masters. It can be a worshipful master. Not the junior or senior warden because they're representatives, but not members of the Grand Lodge of Texas, right?
Yeah.
Because your installing officer does this installation by the authority of, and your installing marshal makes the proclamation in the name of the most worshipful Grand Lodge of Texas. And neither of them have the authority to perform or act or speak on behalf of that organization unless they're members of it.
Yeah.
So your assistant marshal doesn't have to be, because he's just yanking chairs.
What about chaplain?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. That's something we probably should have looked up, huh? That's how good we do research. But
yeah, Fort Worth strikes again.
So, an interesting twist, though, is I believe the Worshipful Master can actually install his own officers.
This is correct.
If he wanted to.
I've seen it done. I've seen the senior warden that was being installed as Worshipful Master get installed as Worshipful Master and then turn around and take over the installation, which was legit. It was cool.
Which, I mean, that's badass.
Yeah, that's a good little way to team building, show leadership. But also having an installing marshal is kind of it's a tip of the hat of, hey, I really appreciate all you've done for me kind of thing too as well.
Well, and also having a good installing marshal can be make a difference, because there's even for guys that have been in the chairs for let's say 5 years or whatever, right? Sometimes you're still going to get guys that as the master-elect getting installed as Worshipful Master, they might, get confused or too excited during the flow of installation, and they might not stand in the right place, or they may not face they may not face to turn him when, he's trying to put the jewel on them or whatever. And having a marshal that's very comfortable, that can guide people through the process subtly, is very useful, because you never know when we've all been there. Even guys that are 20 years into the craft will occasionally have the bottom of their brain just drop out, and you're left standing there like a zombie. So,
yeah.
That's where we're lucky too. We're going to have a fantastic installing marshal.
Perfect.
Yeah, that is a good point, though, that if your team has never done one before, it might be a good idea to do the dry run, or at least go over it with your installing master as incoming worshipful master, to make sure he knows the flow and what he's doing. Because if you've never done it before, it's a little involved. There's a lot of talking.
Yeah. So what are some ways that you can divide the labor involved with an installation? How do you want to get the installing team to work on stuff? Do you want to get your officer team to work on stuff? Or how do you divvy up labor so that it's fair to people involved and work gets done?
So I think you would want to actually you would want to divvy it up among your officers, right? And that way they feel like they're part of the process. Plus it gives them some practical working knowledge of things to expect for when it's their turn. Ideally, in an ideal situation, your installing team, especially if they're from outside your lodge, you just want them to be able to show up. Everything's already taken care of by you and your officers, and they just have to focus on the actual ceremony itself. But if you have stewards that cook food, make sure that they're involved in that, especially because your installation dinner is probably going to be one of your largest dinners of the year. Make sure your wardens are involved with the planning of, you don't want to just spring on them, hey, I was thinking about trying this radical new program. You want to make sure that you get their input on that as well as, getting their thoughts on what they would like to see for the installation too. Because in the end, even if you're being installed as Worshipful Master, it's not really about you. It's about the lodge and it's about the members in it.
Yeah. No, and that's a good point too, of divvying it up between your team, because it would be a good idea to have your incoming junior warden make sure that he's communicating to the stewards, and then your incoming senior wardens communicating to the junior deacon and marshal, and the master to the others, what's expected of them at installation, because there's a lot of little nuances, like lining up outside the door in order that you're going to be installed and all that, and make sure everybody knows what's going on. So day of, you're not running around like chickens with your head cut off kind of thing. And that way you as Worshipful Master aren't in charge of just telling everybody. You're including your officers on it. And then they have an idea of what to expect when they're coming up. Because, even though that thing is in the monitor word for word, there's a lot of stuff that come day of, you don't want to have to be herding cats. You want everybody knowing what they're doing. So I think next thing, one of the things that I put down that I've seen at an installation that I thought was really cool, when you've got a bunch of guests there that aren't Masons, we talk a lot of jargon in Masonry. The best example is Worshipful Master. We get used to that, hearing it all the time, but if you're hearing that for the first time, you're like, what in the heck is Worshipful Master mean?
Yeah, do these guys worship this one dude?
Exactly.
Right?
You're right. Do they call him Master? Is this like some weird S&M club, I guess?
No, and this guy explained why he wore a hat, what the gavels were for, so mote it be. He explained a lot of things that I think really brings the guest in and makes it more of a meaningful ceremony for them if they understand that jargon, because we can start speaking a second language. Yeah,
and in addition to that, you need to, whoever is providing that synopsis needs to be a fairly charismatic speaker, because the last thing that you want is to have somebody come up to the podium and talk to some non-Masons and rumble and ramble on.
Or,
like the term Worshipful Master is this, and you're already going, kill me, please, But it's great to have somebody go up there with, a good amount of jocularity and lightheartedness, kind of engage people in a very casual sort of manner, and, it just kind of very easily explain stuff, and that your glossary of terms needs to be 2 minutes or less. Like, if you're up there for more than 2.5 minutes, something's going wrong, because we don't use that much jargon. We use a lot of it, but we don't use anything that would require you to ramble on.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not.
We don't need a recitation of Mackey's Encyclopedia up there.
Yeah. Nor, even worse, do you need a guy up there talking down in a sense to people, like, look what I know kind of thing. This is a moment to bring them in the fold.
Yeah, because they're, if they're at our installation, by default, we're kind of treating them like family.
Yeah.
And I think you need to be aware of what your audience is going to be, because, like, if you have a fair number of non-Masonic guests, that is a fantastic idea, a great way to introduce them to the fraternity, right, and what we're all about. But if it's just like your wife and kids and your members' wives and kids, most of them, are probably going to be like, yeah, we know all this
Yeah.
Let's get on with it.
We've been dealing for this insanity since he's been a Master Mason. Please leave us alone.
But if you're going to have a lot of guests who are from outside the fraternity, yes, that is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I mean, because as soon as that is over, the focus goes back to the lodge, and that gives a little focus to your guest, and it shows some appreciation for them being there. You know, it's an acknowledgement that they're actually there. So it's not a bad idea. Let's talk food. What kind of food should you have at installation?
Good food.
So, yes, actually, good food always brings people back.
Yeah.
On here, I have to admit, this is one of the best ways that I was able to involve my wife. So I got the menu we happen to use a caterer, and I got a list of all of their dishes, their entrees, their sides, their salads, their desserts, and I went through it with her, and it was a fantastic evening. Her and I just going through it, and it felt weird, almost like planning our wedding all over again, you know?
Oh, boy, I hope she doesn't listen to this podcast.
But no, I mean, it's almost like you put that much, you're invested that much into it. It's like, oh, well, what do you think people are going to like, and what do you think of our guests? It has a lot of the same lingo that you use while you're discussing it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was great, you know? So, you know, after going through probably about 30 different entree options, you know, we settled on giving guests a choice, you know, that they can do when they RSVP. You know, we have chicken cordon bleu if you don't like seafood, and if you do like seafood, you know, then we're going to have fish, you know, Atlantic salmon. And then we made sure, and that kind of helped us make the decision of what sides are we going to choose that go with both of those. You know, because you have some that are going to be fantastic with one, terrible with the other. So it was a really involved, fantastic conversation that, in a way, to get her involved in it, to where, you know, it's part of her planning too. You know, she's a part of it, and not just, hey, I need you to make decorations and take care of gifts, but, you know, bring her in on some of the more fun aspects of it too.
Yeah, and you know, that's definitely one of those things that you want to gauge, you know, because my wife loves being involved in that kind of stuff, and we have a great time doing it together. But if your wife doesn't have an interest in it, don't pawn that off on her. And even if she does, don't pawn it off on her and then walk away. You got to help. You know, that's the whole point of this thing, is for you guys to spend some time together. Because most of the time, wives are going to be willing to help, you know, with something like that. But if you just dump it on her and walk away, good luck getting help next time.
Yeah, because that's going to sit in the shower.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought... Go ahead, Billy. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say, in a way, I mean, we have a bad habit of that, you know, especially when it comes to our Eastern Star members. It feels almost like we're like, hey, you know, all that stuff, you know, you do at home, you know, like cook dinner and stuff like that. Great, do it for all my buddies too.
Yeah, and I've heard horror stories too. Like, you know, I was listening to a past-worthy matron tell me about the time that the Worshipful Master of the lodge that met in the building had this massive installation planned, and she found out that he wanted the Eastern Star chapter to cook for them, like something like late the night before. And so, I mean, it didn't happen. He ended up having to order. If I remember the story, he ordered takeout. I don't know if it was pizza or Chinese or what, but she, you know, in no uncertain terms, and something that I won't quote on the podcast. You know, she told him to go pound sand, and but you know, not with that phrasing. So, you know, timeliness. You know, if you are using the services of a co-fraternal body that meets in your building, give them a lengthy cable tow, you know? Yeah,
that's a great point, Gabe. You got to communicate. And that's probably the cornerstone of this whole process is communication.
Yeah. Another thing to remember, I think, is something that Billy and I talked about when, you know, I think it was right before you took the menu to Betty, for consideration. You and I had been bouncing around the idea of like, well, how nice can we make this dinner? And and I said, well, I'm going to just ask and see what it would cost for us to do a steak dinner. It's not going to happen, price wise, but I want to ask anyway. Well, it turns out our caterer can do a served steak dinner for about high 50s per head. So let's say $57 a head. If you've got the budget for $57 a head and you want to do a served dinner, hell yeah, go for it, But keep in mind, you also may want to have 40, 50, 60 people there. And I've been to installations where there were over 100 people in attendance. So keep that in mind. Keep expectations realistic. You may not have steak dinner with your installation, but fortunately, that was a conversation that I told Billy before I called our caterer, and I knew before I called our caterer, like, this is probably not happening.
Right. Well, one of the things that I heard Billy mention, and I think that it kind of went under the radar, was we've kind of talked around it, but the idea that we need to be thinking about not just the people who eat in your lodge. How many times have we gone to a lodge where it's mac and cheese, spaghetti and meatballs with not too much sauce, and we're just eating in our own group, and we're not really thinking about. There might be people who come to our events that want vegetables that are actually green.
Do you not like dry spaghetti?
Or they might want to eat something besides a carbohydrate. They might actually be diabetic.
Yeah.
So you have in planning the food, it's not just about having food. It's about having food that is appropriate for the guests and the atmosphere you're trying to create. And of course, within the budget you're trying to create, whatever that is. But you can absolutely create a decent menu however you're doing it. Just remember to consider that more people than your lodge are going to be there. Because I think our brothers tend to be very forgiving with stewards who are a little maybe not the best stewards on the planet. Maybe this is their first time ever cooking for groups or being responsible for preparing food for groups. But whenever you get guests that are outside of the fraternity coming in and eating, all of a sudden, if all they see is mashed potatoes and gravy and mac and cheese and some rice pilaf, they're going to be really upset.
Yeah.
And we've all been to lodges where that was the meal.
Well,
and we were happy to eat that.
One of the things, so I'm having a lot of adventures this year because I am honored to serve the Grand Council of Texas as a District Deputy Grand Master this year. And I've made a couple of my official visits already where, in an effort to eat healthier, I eat a ketogenic diet. And I have encountered some evenings where I literally was not able to eat a single item on the table.
The iced tea had carbs in it.
Right.
Well, so like...
Sweet tea even has some sugar in it.
So it was, and I'm going to make up an imaginary meal here so that no group of people feels called out. But let's say you had, and you'll see this meal at a lot of lodges for stated meeting dinner. So this is not an atypical Masonic meal. Chicken fried steak for your entree. Your side is mashed potatoes and like fried okra, right? And you got brown gravy and iced tea, but only sweet tea, not unsweet tea. And then maybe some Cokes in the fridge or whatever, and but no diet drinks. And you got banana pudding for dessert, but there's not a single vegetable in sight other than the fried okra.
Make sure you take your insulin, boys and girls.
Yeah, so it can be kind of a challenge sometimes. So there was one district deputy visit that I made recently where my evening dinner was 3 cups of coffee, and I ate after the meeting. But it's also, so cater. One of the things that you're also going to want to do is if you are inviting a dignitary, like let's say the Grand Master or whatever. One of the things that you're definitely going to want to know is not just does he have a preference, but does he have any allergies or dietary needs, right? Because let's say, and I don't know if anybody in the Grand Line is allergic to shellfish or whatever, but let's say you do get a Grand Master that comes to install you, and a server in the kitchen accidentally cross-contaminated a piece of chicken with, shrimp or something like that. They handled a shrimp salad or something.
Don't judge me, Gordon Ramsay. Get off my back.
But, so the problem with that is, it can literally kill somebody,
Well, and also not just even that. I mean, I know you're talking specifically about dignitaries, but imagine if you have like a spouse or something from one of the lodge officers who's going to be there, and they are maybe vegan or vegetarian, or they have some other dietary concern, allergy related, or they're dealing with sensitivities to gluten or something of that nature.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to plan for these things because it's not just about a dietary choice in some cases where people are trying to, like Gabe here, eat a little bit healthier, or with a specific mindset, as he grabs his belly and shakes it like Santa Claus. But also, you have to take into consideration that there are real reasons why people have to have a certain kind of food. Or not have a certain kind of food, or not be around a certain kind of food. And so it's important that I know that, most of us are like, we know it all. We all eat whatever the stewards prepare, and we're used to that. But again, we're not just preparing for our audience, we're preparing for an entire entourage of people who may or may not like what we as Masons are willing to scarf down before a stated meeting, and then go upstairs and have issues.
Yeah, exactly. And I would describe, in terms of willingness to consume certain types of food, I would describe, most Masons, myself included, as fast-moving garbage dumpsters. Like, we'll put anything in our bodies. Like, sometimes it defies description.
Well, so just in case you do have that allergy there, just check your insurance policy, which actually brings me up to, speaking of all this conversation about food, and even before talking about the team, one of the people, how do you divvy up the work? Well, one of the first people you should approach is your treasurer and say, "Brother Treasurer, what is my budget?"
Yeah, that's true.
Please give money. Please.
Before we move on from food, I just want to make the point that you can have the best installation ceremony ever done and serve a less than par meal and the whole night's shot. And then vice versa. Yeah. You can have the worst ceremony and everything go wrong that can go wrong, and you go sit down to a beautiful meal and all is forgiven.
Yeah, so the meal is way more important.
You got it.
It's the food, the ambiance, and the fellowship of the meal that is really the make or break for a lot of Masonic actually for any function really. If you have an installation that does go sideways, you better have some good food.
Yeah, and that's the thing, especially for guests. I mean, they'll forgive us if we feed them good, if we have some mess-ups. But along that lines, too, we've got decorations on here. Why in the world would we want to decorate for this thing? Well, I mean, we're men. Why are we going to decorate for this?
Because I like nice things, Rick.
Because both of you are married, and you know what happens when you get married and invite a woman into your life.
So here's the thing, too, though. If you're planning on using your installation to bring in people from outside the lodge, I don't know how to put this delicately, but some of our lodges are not necessarily in the best shape. So decorations may be able to help with that. And not only that, but believe it or not, again, this is one area where your wife or your girlfriend will be a fantastic ally to help plan with you. Again, you don't dump it on her, but you involve her in the planning process. Because like Betty, one of her biggest concerns is she wants to make sure that she has something that the wives and girlfriend, can take home, like some kind of flowers or knickknacks or something, because she feels that that's a very important part of any installation ceremony, and it helps make it memorable. It's like, oh, I picked up this fantastic glass, or, this floral arrangement, or something like that. So it's not only to help cover up flaws that your building may have, but it can also add to the impression that your guests have when leaving your installation ceremony.
No, it's not that it can. It will. It will either detract or it will add to the ceremony.
Yeah, and think about how well. And so let's say you do. We were joking about we're all men. Da 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 da. But let's talk about that. Let's say you do have a closed ceremony, Master Masons only, right? And the dinner is also Master Masons only, which some lodges do, right?
Right.
Even then, having flowers or candles or something that is a focus of the table is going to class the joint up a lot. And it's going to make you feel like you're in a more, you're more of like an establishment, right? Because it adds something to the table when you don't have an empty, open spot there. Now, if you had like a mutual tray of food, right, where like let's say every table has a ham or something like that, or like every table has a turkey or whatever, then yeah, sure, you don't need a centerpiece, right? Because there's something that fills the empty void in the table. But I've been to think about how many times you've sat around a table and you just have this big gaping void in the middle, and there's like nothing in there. Visually, it's very distracting. Because a centerpiece actually kind of camouflages empty space and makes it feel like the room is more full because there's less empty space overall. So it actually gives people an appearance of more attendance, which is actually kind of interesting.
And also, there's the idea too that this is not just your regular stated meeting dinner.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us have a dining place in our lodges that basically consists of some chairs and some form of folding table, whether it's a square folding table or a round folding table. It's just a long table that is in all of our garages at some point. And we go there and we have dinner every week or every month whenever you decide to meet.
Yep.
How are you going to set this up differently? Because this is a special event. This only happens for these people in these offices once. Mm-hmm. And so how do you set this aside from the regular stated meetings? And it's going to be the way you decorate. And I think it is incumbent upon the people who are planning it to decide what sort of ambiance they want to create. Do they want it to be a little bit quieter and somber, more of an evening kind of affair? Do they want it to be more of a bright and upbeat kind of daytime affair, maybe with just, like throwing some tablecloths on it, some color or something, I don't know. But whatever the situation might be, decorations are going to set it aside from just how is this different from a regular stated meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do anything, as Masons, we're taught it has to have wisdom, strength,
and beauty. And I like beautiful things. And I'll tell, listeners, don't you dare have an installation dinner without tablecloths. I've seen it done, and it's not good. Have tablecloths. I don't care if you have to buy them, rent them, whatever. But if you know a brother Master Mason who has recently gotten married, or you are a brother Master Mason who is about to get married, consider that often buying your tablecloths for your wedding will be cheaper than it will be to rent them, which is what happened in our case. When my wife Sarah and I got married, we bought all the tablecloths that we used at our wedding because it was cheaper to do so. We still have all of those tablecloths, and those tablecloths have now been used, I think at this point.
So send your emails of requests for tablecloths at your installation to fortworth148@gmail.com.
How dare you? Yes. No, I mean, but so at this point in time, we've used those tablecloths at about half a dozen different Masonic functions, and we've loaned them out as like our wedding gift. In one case, was the loan of all of these tablecloths to the couple getting married because it saved them a substantial amount of money.
Yeah,
and so.
And again, I think the point of this is that just like in the food, it's not about you and your lodge.
Yeah.
You have to consider the comfort and the experience of people who are not necessarily in your lodge, because we as Masons have come to learn to tough it. Mm-hmm. If something isn't perfect, we overlook it because of maintaining harmony within the lodge. But not everybody should have the same sort of tough-it sort of experience that we do. And so dress up your lodge a little bit. It doesn't have to be fancy. If you have a lodge that is, a more rural lodge and you're a much more relaxed lodge, and maybe you don't even wear coats and ties to your installation, maybe you just, business casual it or something. Even if you are the most casual lodge in the state, do something to dress up the event that you're the sort of the reception of the event, because it makes a difference.
Yeah, and I'm to kind of going with that. Do something to make a difference, make it special. It might be a little bit, kind of tangential, but I'm a big believer in the concept of egregore, right? And egregore is like the spirit of an organization of people, right? Like if you have a lodge, your lodge is going to have a spirit. Your lodge as a collective is alive in some way. It's going to have an egregore. And so nurture it, right? Think of your lodge as a living organism, like an animal that needs to be taken care of and sometimes pampered, right? Treat your lodge well. Treat the egregore of the lodge well, and it'll treat you well. And it's something that can really help your lodge grow and thrive, because people see the importance you place on it, and something as simple as a candle and a couple of flowers in the middle of the table can make all the difference in the world towards that.
Yeah. One last thing I want to touch on decorations before we move on is that if your wife is not into that kind of thing, I bet you there's a brother in your lodge that does have a wife that is, and you can use them as a consultant. One of our past masters, I don't do much when it comes in the way of decorations without running it past her to see if I'm missing anything or if there's anything I can add. So keep that in mind, as well, if your wife's not into that kind of stuff, that there are people out there. You're not going to be able to dump it on her, but she can at least give you some good ideas to think outside the box.
And my wife is one of those gals, right? Yeah. She loves putting together centerpieces and stuff, and to the point where there was a when I served in the East in my cryptic council, we celebrated our centennial, and she was on night shift for a couple of nights before, and so basically she was going to come back from night shift, sleep all day basically, to recharge from night shift, and then wake up with enough time to get ready for the centennial. And so I called her and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to put together the centerpieces for the lodge. What do you want me to do with them? Because I know you're going to be working." And I made this phone call a couple days before the actual centennial, and she says, "Don't even think about it. I'll take care of it," because she's so passionate about creating beautiful things. She's very artistic in many ways, but centerpieces is one of them. That she says, "Nope, I'm going to try and tackle this," and she created some great, beautiful centerpieces that just really looked wonderful. So if you find somebody that has a passion for that, absolutely go for it. Get them involved.
All right, let's move on to the next subject, which is dress codes. Dress code, dress code, dress code.
Trigger warning.
Trigger warning. So, the installation ceremony doesn't have to have a dress code. You're doing Hawaiian shirts, right, Billy, for your installation?
No, but if you do, here's the important thing.
But if you do. All right, I'm going to your...
If you decide to set a dress code, no matter what it is, whether it's tuxedos or Hawaiian shirts, make sure your officers know, and especially make sure your installing team knows, because the last thing you want is the Grand Master to show up if he's your installing officer not dressed appropriately, because guess what? He's going to be mad at you.
Spoken like a true elitist.
Well, it helps to have everybody uniform. Although, speaking of, I recently went to an installation which was in Hawaiian shirts. It was super fun. It was the installation of El Texas Grotto. Shout out to
I saw the pictures of that.
Yeah,
it looked like it was fun.
Matt Fisher.
Yeah. So Matt Fisher is the monarch of El Texagrado now. And one of the things that he wanted to do, which I thought was really fun, was he said, hey guys, if you're an officer and you're getting installed, and optional for guests, if you're an officer and you're getting installed, wear a Hawaiian shirt, I think they called it like island dress or like island dress formal or something like that. So it was a Hawaiian shirt, light colored slacks, and sandals. And it was really fun. It was just this one, especially because it's Grotto, which is one of the recreational bodies that's focused on fun and frivolity. It made perfect sense. So, it doesn't have to be Grotto. If your lodge has that spirit where you guys are lighthearted and you know how to have fun, then absolutely go for a Hawaiian shirt installation if you think it's appropriate for your lodge. If it's not appropriate, don't do it.
Yeah. No, that's totally up to you. But you guys all want to, if you wear, pressed jeans, boots, and a white shirt, just make sure everybody's on the same page to where, you get a little more detailed with it than usual. To where if you're going to wear suits, tell everybody a dark suit to where you all look similar. You know what I mean? And try to make it as sharp as you can, if at all possible. Some may not even worry about that. Show up as you are. That's your prerogative. But like Billy said, if you're going to have a dress code, communicate well in advance. So if somebody's got to buy a suit, they've got months, if not years, to get that done.
And one of the big advantages behind having, regardless of whether you do a starched white shirt and bib overalls or Hawaiian shirts and slacks or full tuxedos, right? The big advantage of setting a dress code is that when you do a group photo for your officers, you're all going to look really good with a uniform sort of look.
Exactly.
It's going to help a lot, even if it's all like, hey, you guys are all wearing the same dark blue jeans with a embroidered polo, right? If you're all wearing the same thing, it's going to look good.
Yes, sir.
So, Billy, what is the dress code for this year's installation?
So, again, you're going to call me elitist, but it is...
You elitist!
Right. But, again, because, we're doing an evening installation, we're going to have the Grandmaster there. It's like, it's an opportunity to make an event out of it.
Yeah, so tuxedos, black tie.
And that's another good point, because if it's going to be black tie, that needs to be communicated to your spouses. Mm-hmm. You don't want them showing up and feeling underdressed either. So you better be on your game, boys, and communicate that to your wife. Not 2 weeks before the event either. Mm-hmm. It's better be months in advance when it comes to a black tie.
Yeah.
That's an extreme scenario, but, that's what elitists do.
But yeah, and it makes a real difference too, because men have a very big advantage in dress code, because the dress code for men is very well established, right? And if you look at some guides for dress code, I have seen guides for formal dress where it gives explanations of like cocktail dress for women and men and casual dress for men and women. And then for some of them, like, white tie or black tie optional or whatever, it'll just say, women dress accordingly. What? What does that mean?
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, she knows what that means. Because
she's going to hold that against you if you don't let her know.
Yeah.
You're in trouble.
So, and most ladies out there have a pretty good sense of judgment in regards to what to wear to a black tie ball, or a black tie event. So, don't worry there. But it is a courtesy, because if she feels the need to pick up a new dress or whatever, then you're going to want to give her enough time to do that. It's the polite thing to do.
And be prepared to answer questions of which dress, this one or this one, because I've already been going through those rounds with my wife for the installation.
Well, and for example, if your lodge decides that it wants all of its officers, like regardless, let's say your lodge wants to do black tie with maroon cummerbunds and and bow ties, or
That's the Aggie coming out anyway.
Hey, maroon is my default, man. Whoop, gig 'em. But let's say black tie with maroon cummerbunds, or you want to do blue Hawaiian shirts. Pattern doesn't matter, but they're all blue, right? If you have a predominating color in your dress code, also let your wife know, because she's going to want to know. And I've had that question. Sarah asked me once. I was like, "Hey, we're going to this installation dinner, for this group." And she said, well, what are you going to wear? And I said, well, it's AMD, so I'm going to wear my green bow tie and my green vest. And she chose a dress that matched to that color, and not just to the color green, but to the specific shade that I was wearing.
Yeah. So the moral of this story is communicate.
Communicate with the grand officers, with your officers, with the caterer, with your wife, your kids,
everybody,
your dog. I don't know.
So the next subject here, what does one need to pull off an installation? I'm just going to read through this list and we can kind of discuss it afterwards. Items that you're going to need, monitor first of all, because the installation ceremony is in that monitor. Check your table of contents and you can read it from start to finish so you know how the whole process is going to go. We mentioned you're going to need an installing officer, installing marshal, and an installing chaplain, and then the assistant marshal to remove chairs if you're into that. You're going to need a chair on the west side of the altar. You're going to need chairs for everybody in that quarter moon little setup, which is it's got a picture in the monitor if you're not aware. You need a table north of the altar with the implements listed in the monitor. You've got square, compasses, plumb line, Grand Lodge laws, Bible, charter. There's a whole list of things.
And
in
all
there.
the jewels.
Yeah, all the jewels for everybody being installed. If somebody's not there, leave that jewel out. So because that table should be pretty bare.
And
of any
you said
jewels.
there's 13 officers that get installed, right?
Yeah, if that's a full team.
So
that's rare, but
big table.
Yeah. Optional, you've got flag presentation by Knights Templars, National Sojourners, or DMLA. Another option is you've got gavel presentations, open ceremonies by Rainbow or DMLA, or family members if they want to give anything. Make sure there's a spot for that, and it's put in the plan. And Billy added on here. Make sure you've got time for your guests to be introduced by their significant others. Give each officer a moment to introduce who they bring, and that to me is paramount. More important than anything, we want to recognize those people that have come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also too, a nice touch, and it's not required, but something that I think shows a lot, especially if you're choosing your installing team based on your past relationships and respect for these individuals too, is you may want to think about putting together a couple of gifts for your installing team just to say thank you.
Yeah, true that. That is especially like when you've got the Grand Master coming, but if somebody traveled, you know what I mean, and they're not a member of your lodge and they traveled a certain distance, give them a tip of the hat somehow. It's something a little more than an attaboy.
Yeah. There is real value to that, right? Because it makes them feel more special, especially, if you travel, and I've seen guys travel like from to DFW to attend installations and stuff, and nobody said anything about them showing up. And I'm going, dude, this guy just drove hours to show up to your installation and you haven't said anything? Like, come on, man. You know, and if it's not just it's a really oddly specific example, but thank your guests for being there, and especially laud the guests who have traveled long distances. Yeah, that's a yeah. As with all things, this is a volunteer organization, and we don't get paid, so we get paid in acknowledgement and gratitude.
That's it. And there's definitely going to be something that we've left out, that you're going to need. So it's imperative that you put your agenda together for your stated meeting, step by step, year if not months in advance. So as time goes on, you can add those things to the list. You can add notes, what needs to be done here and there, to where when we get to that day and you have guests there, it looks like we know what we're doing, like we've done it before.
another thing you're going to need for installation is an agenda of events. You're going to want to have an itinerary that gives you're going to run early or late. This is an inevitability. All right, you're never going to hit all your marks, but have a good idea and write it down. Write down when you're going to start, how long you expect stuff to take, and then what your agenda of events is. Gavel presentation, thank the guests, Grand Master's gift because he was the installing officer, personal remarks, introduction of spouses, yada, yada, yada. And have in your little written agenda, in parentheses next to each item, have a length of time written down and a timestamp. So say, you're going to deliver if everything goes perfectly, which it won't, that you're going to deliver your personal remarks as Worshipful Master at, 7:42 p.m. You're not going to hit that, but it's going to give you a sense of pacing, because the last thing you want to do is have an installation that has run over crazy amounts of time, and then all of your guests are either going, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry, get me out of here, or, oh my gosh, I ate before the installation with the rest of everybody, and now I'm falling asleep and I want to go home, right? You don't want to drag this out for your guests. It's just brutal.
That reminds me of something we forgot, and I'm drawing a blank of what it's called. What is the thing called that has the agenda for guests? It's the nice little pamphlet.
A program?
Program.
There you go.
Goodness.
Yes.
Put together
a nice program. Make it something that people actually enjoy looking at. Don't make it like a Word document that you folded in half, right? Actually have a nice program put together, something that is visually pleasing, and something that that is going to be kind of cool to look at because that's going to go in the minutes. Chances are your secretary is going to want a copy of it.
Said the font Nazi.
Yeah, I know, right?
So no Comic Sans for him.
Gabe can get anxiety off the font.
Yeah, I can't. What was that? Because it was like an advertisement for MasoniCon or something where I was like, no, it's the wrong font.
because I think Mark had used like Comic Sans Serif or something.
Oh,
and it looked terrible.
I'm sure it was me. Don't put that on Mark.
Yeah,
okay,
that was if Comic Sans was involved, I absolutely blame Rhit.
Well, for font, it was never a big deal till I met
As
Gabe.
long as it's not wingdings, I'm okay.
No, I'm self-conscious about my font. I even emailed to Gabe.
Arial. I don't even think I'm saying that right. Times New Roman is unacceptable now.
Across the board.
Yeah.
Something else I wanted
Helvetica or death. Wait, what?
Touch on before we wrap this up is, in an installation ceremony, traditionally, a Lodge of Sorrow is closed by the outgoing master, and, the Master Mason's Lodge is open, then called to refreshment, which really isn't that big of a deal. That's typically done well before guests get there, and if not, make sure it is. But the one that always causes hiccups is afterwards. So you're at refreshment, and it's time, the ceremony's over, and it's time to go eat. And I've seen a lot of lodges go, well, y'all go up there, and we'll be up there in a minute. We've got to close this lodge and open a Lodge of Sorrow. No. You go eat with your guests, and you come back and do that later. Not on their time. You do that on your time.
Yeah.
Do not keep your guests waiting for our ceremony, because we can stay at refreshment, for plenty of time to go eat and then come down and do that.
Well, and I've been there to installations. It was and actually including one of our installations. I was not yet an officer, so I was already getting involved with the lodge and everything, and being very active. But I was not yet an officer, so while the lodge closed, the Lodge of Sorrow, I was asked to go down with the guest and act as a wrangler, right? And which was more than fine. I was happy to do it. I'll tell you what, though, it was super awkward because you have all of these people that are down there. None of the officers are there, and what is the one thing in common that all these people share with each other? All these guests.
They're hungry.
No. Well, yes. What is other than their hunger, which you have inflicted upon them? What is the other thing? The second thing that they'll have in common?
They're probably pretty new to everybody.
I'm feeling pressured.
Well,
You're feeling pressure. It's the officers. They all, in the vast majority of cases, your guests, and even if your friends or your wives or whatever, everybody knows each other through your involvement in the lodge. The reason why they know each other is that you are part of the lodge, and they met other people that were attached to members of the lodge. So the officers and members of the lodge are what they have in common. And if all of your officers and members are up there closing the Lodge of Sorrow, they're going to sit around there going, twiddling their thumbs, feeling really awkward because they don't have the people there that keep them in common. Now, there's a lot of sociable people that do just fine with this, but, I've been to some quiet installation dinners, it happens. And so come back afterwards while everybody's scarfing down, banana pudding or what have you. Go up there and close that Lodge of Sorrow. Wipe the banana pudding out of your beard first, but then go up.
Yeah.
Another part of that, though, is you don't actually have to immediately open up the Lodge of Sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I actually know one master this year that he didn't open up the Lodge of Sorrow, and he said, you know what, I think it's bad luck. And if we have someone pass away, then we'll open the Lodge of Sorrow. But I'm not going to do it ahead of time because I don't want to jinx myself.
And I respect that, don't you put that voodoo on me,
Nobody dies in this lodge this year.
And well, he's going to be really pissed if somebody does.
Issuing an edict.
Worshipful Master's edict, nobody's allowed to die this year. But no, and I kind of get that too, right? Like, okay, you're going to close the Lodge of Sorrow before you start, and that's it. Open as needed, which that's also perfectly valid.
Honestly, that's what I've been thinking about doing, is saying, you know what, let's close it, and let's not open it unless we need it.
It's blasphemy.
Yeah, and I'm fully supportive of that, because all that means then is that all you got to do is, call from refreshment to labor, and then from labor to close. And that's much shorter than also opening a Lodge of Sorrow in addition. Because that way you can kind of slip away from your guests and have it done very discreetly and not occupy a bunch of their time. An additional thing to keep in mind is that you don't need all of your officers to be there. You don't need all of your members to be there for closing of the lodge, because what lodge are we opening?
Masters.
A Master's Lodge. And how many people do you need to open or close a Master's Lodge by law?
17.
Wait, what?
Sorry.
17?
I'm just really bad at math.
Okay, what are we now, like Memphis Mizram? No, you need 3. And now, granted, there's some mechanics involving the junior deacon and the Tyler that get complicated if you only have your Worshipful Master, Senior, and Junior Wardens there. But have the minimal amount of guys there to close the lodge, and that way you can keep as many of your members and officers down there with the family as possible.
Yeah.
It's to me, this is just kind of like a keep it simple, guys.
No, just keep your guest in the focus. I mean, they're number one. We don't have to do our ceremonies right after to close right after it. We can wait.
Yeah.
And as much as we would like to think that this sort of installation thing is about us, in many ways it's not about us.
Well, if you do an open ceremony, you've put the focus more on your guests than you have on you. So that's a decision you got to make up front. And if you do an open one, you need to cater to your guest. And of course, do a good ceremony, show them we know what we're doing, but they're the focus if it's open.
Yeah. And I guess another thing to keep in mind too, right? This may not apply to every lodge, right? But if you are a lodge that likes to go out for drinks, have an idea in mind of where you want to retire to after dinner. If you're going to do post-dinner drinks and celebrate, have a retreat set up. You don't have to necessarily have a reservation, but just make it clear with all of your officers. Hey guys, after installation dinner, we're all going to go to so-and-so bar, and we're going to have a good time. And, so-and-so and so-and-so are designated drivers if that case comes up. Hopefully it doesn't, right? No. Ideally we're practicing temperance and all that jazz, and nobody should need a designated driver if we all behave ourselves. But, make your stewards the DDs. Bottom of the chain.
So what if we choose to display fortitude, right? Having as many shots as possible.
Look at my liver, isn't it strong? No.
It survived all of this time.
Yeah. Fortitude is equally removed from rashness and rashness and cowardice. Yeah. So I don't know.
Don't be rash, Billy. Come on.
Don't be rash. Getting drunk under the table seems pretty rash.
So did we forget anything before we wrap this up?
No, actually, this went on a little bit longer than I was expecting out of this episode.
We're good at that. We can chat.
Well, that's half the fun is brainstorming.
Exactly.
Well, I suspect for those listeners out there who they kind of like what they heard and they want to use this as a template for their installations. They want to use this as a checklist. I'm pretty sure that we can count on somebody at this table putting together some show notes so that at what minutes and what time we talked about which subjects. That's what we normally do. And if somebody really wanted us to put together a little PDF, I'm sure we could do that too. I'd be willing to volunteer for a checklist.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We can email this agenda to you. And
congratulations on putting together this package, Evve. I applaud your
Contact
efforts.
Contact Evve at
gmail.com.
At fortworth148@gmail.com.
Yep. Contact Evve, keyboard slam at gmail.com. Kuykendall.
Right. Let's get them to spell that. Yeah. I can't even get Rhit to spell it properly.
Yeah. Kuykendall. That's all I got.
All right, gentlemen.
So, Masonic Quote of the Week. Masonry is the science of life in a society of men by signs, symbols, and ceremonies, having as its basis a system of morality and for its purpose, the perfection and happiness of the individual and the race. That is by illustrious brother George Foote Moore, 33rd degree, a Presbyterian minister, author, and teacher. Folks, if you want to...
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Better yet, he was a member of the Skull and Bones Society.
Ooh.
Really?
Illuminati confirmed.
There are no skulls in Masonry.
There are no skulls in... How dare we even imply? Folks, if you want to learn more about us, you can reach us at www.fortworth148.org. We are at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook. Our email is info148@fortworth148.org. Texas MasoniCon 2020 is on July 25th, and there is a festive board the night before on that Friday night. You can learn more about Texas MasoniCon at texasmasonicon.com. That's texasmasonicon.com.
It's been fun. This is Rhit Moore signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.
This is Gabe Jagush signing off.